Good morning. It's Cindy from the Osterville Village Library, and I'd like to welcome everybody this morning. And as everybody probably is aware, this is Autism Awareness Month, and a very important topic for so many people and families on the Cape and beyond. So we're very happy to have with us today two authors who are experiencing this firsthand. So I'd like to welcome authors Nicole Donovan, who wrote A Life Suspended, and Joanne Crawford, who wrote Choices. They're going to share their memories. They're two mothers who share their unique perspective on building resilience in the face of adversity while raising children with autism. In a time of uncertainty and isolation, they have found courage and resolve as they press forward to secure educational and therapeutic support to meet their son's individual needs. Journeys of these two women as they share their personal stories of love and determination while navigating the confusing world of autism. And I commend you so much in being able to write a book, and raise a child, and keep your families and all that together. So welcome, welcome, and we're excited to hear from you today.
Thank you for having us. We're going to be reading from our memoirs, and I'm going to begin, and then Joanne is going to take the lead at the end, and then we'll open it up for questions for anybody that has questions. So thank you, Cindy and the Osterville Village Library, for inviting us to be part of this wonderful events that you put on with your library. Joanne and I are honored and thrilled to be here to share with you our memoirs about motherhood and raising our children who are on the autism spectrum. We appreciate anyone that has chosen to be here with us tonight to spend this time together. Today, I want to share with you 3 gifts that I have been given: the gift of panic, the gift of uncertainty, and the gift of resilience. While these may not sound like gifts, particularly the first 2, I'm going to share with you just why they have been for me. And to illustrate this, I will read to you from my memoir, A Life Suspended, a mother and son story of autism, extinction bursts, and living a resilient life. I am many things to many people. Aside from being a daughter and a wife, I am a mother of 4 sons, and this by far has changed me in ways that I could never have imagined. In 2012, my youngest son was diagnosed with autism. Jack had collected numerous diagnoses, starting at the age of 3. But it wasn't until his behavior became disruptive and explosive during school hours did we uncover what was at the center of Jack's struggles. By this time, Jack had spun out of control. As a first grade student, he was expelled from public school. We chose to educate him in our home. We began to build a team of professionals, which included therapists, teachers, and a board-certified behavior analyst. The responsibility of being Jack's mom, his advocate, his case manager, rocked me to my core. I was filled with fear, anxiety, and often felt hopeless. The pressures I placed upon myself and the stress of the situation as a whole took a toll on me, and I began to have panic attacks. The gift of panic. Jack had cycled through a lengthy extinction burst where his behavior was explosive and destructive. This was a couple months into him being at home full time. On this day, his occupational therapist made a house call to meet with his team to give us tools and strategies to help him regulate his body and his emotions. On this day, like many others during this time, I experienced a panic attack. Chapter 13, The Zones of Regulation. Beads of perspiration swelled at my hairline as my clammy hands gripped the rubber band and plastic disc. I was out of my league. Parenting a typical child was challenging enough. How was I going to raise a child on the autism spectrum? What if I couldn't? What if it got worse? What if he stayed at home forever and never went back to school? Pins and needles traveled in waves from my fingers and toes to the center of my body. Oh God, don't let me have a panic attack now, not in front of Jack's professionals. No, 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 no. Just breathe in and out, in and out. Their voices faded into the background. I slowly moved my body away from the door frame and into the hallway facing the bathroom. A whirlwind of negative thoughts twisted inside of my head. I imagined Jack running away out into traffic, getting hit by an oncoming car. I saw him lash out at me and punch me as hard as he did before. I saw him slumped over on the floor, wailing and rocking back and forth. My heart pounded. I shut the bathroom door behind me and staggered to the side of the tub. The materials in my hands fell to the floor, and with my knees spread, I leaned in between them and closed my eyes. How would I ever remember to do all that was required for his success? How was I going to execute these sequence steps of his behavior plan? How would I be the mother that Jack needed, the mother he deserved? My chest was light, as if it was being lifted by winged butterflies. I concentrated on my breath, attempting to bring my anxiety down. Several minutes had passed. Once my breathing was even, I stood up and wiped a cold cloth across my face. My body was more grounded. I could no longer feel my heartbeat, no more pounding or fluttered wings, and the tingling sensation had finally subsided. I was relieved that this episode was much shorter than the previous one. I opened the bathroom door and made my way out into the hallway. The therapist backed out of Jack and Aiden's room, the last room upstairs to be addressed during the meeting. Maggie, the OT, looked at my face and returned a sympathetic smile. I know this is like a foreign language. Don't worry. I will type it out for you so we can use it as a reference. She reached out and touched my arm. The unexpected gift of panic brought me to my own therapy sessions, where I unpacked my fear, replayed scenes where I felt victimized, and learned how to soothe my battered and bruised heart. In these sessions, I focused on me and my healing. The panic attacks were my body's way of waving a white flag, and due to the unpredictable nature, as I never knew when they would show up or how long they would last, I had to address my fears and adopt tools to manage my ongoing anxiety. What I found lingering in the dark corners was trauma. The gift of panic was a revelation to me. It gave me clarity to see that the fear of the unknown was in the driver's seat. As I healed and opened to the awareness of these gifts, I discovered that there was something far greater than fear. Chapter 24, Acceptance. One evening, after homework and showers had been checked off the list, I sat in the chair with a cup of my favorite tea. I pulled out a journal and began to write, releasing the chatter that I'd been collecting in my mind. I paused midstream to catch my next thought, and I heard my inner voice speak. Acceptance is the answer to all your problems today. I was startled when I heard the voice, as it was crystal clear and cutting. Ugh, really? This is what you send me? I said out loud, mildly annoyed as I was looking for a moment of peace, not unsolicited advice. Although I was irritated by the interruption, I knew deep in my gut it was true. Several days later, I found myself in my therapist's office, thinking about the message. I am really struggling with this idea of acceptance is the answer, I blurted out to her during our session. I can see that, Janet said as she gestured to my folded arms crossing my chest. I listed off all the reasons. Some of them were old tapes from past trespasses, things that had been ignored or neglected. Some of them were current fears about timing and transition, or the dynamics of the team and the struggle not to take it personally. Monthly meetings were still ongoing, draining financial resources and precious time. I was emotionally spent, returning to the same place over and over again. We sat in the quiet, letting it fill with the sounds of the night that seeped through an open window. How can I accept it? How can I accept the things that are unacceptable? I asked her. After a thoughtful minute, Janet responded, acceptance of the things we cannot change can be very freeing. Accepting a situation as it is in that moment is healing. I'm not asking you to accept unacceptable behavior. I'm reminding you of what you already know. We cannot change the past, nor can you control the future. All you can do is be present in today. But that is what I'm doing. Is it? She asked, raising her left eyebrow. You have done an amazing job. You and your family have gone through the trauma, the extinction burst, therapies, and relentless insistence of holding a system accountable. There is no question. You have been there for him. You have put him ahead of everything else. Accepting what is right now allows you the grace to find inner peace within these situations, Janet said, studying my face. Every time I come across a situation where they're dragging their feet, it feels personal, like they're trying to sabotage him and his accomplishments, I said. Part of accepting what is letting go of the past and the future. We accept the things we cannot change, find the courage to change the things we can, and we seek the wisdom to know the difference, she said. The Serenity Prayer, yes, I'm familiar, but it's not that easy. It's not easy. It's simple, she said. An uncontrollable wave of laughter filled the small room. I knew she knew that I would understand the tongue-in-cheek nature of her inference. I was not new to this concept of letting go. I had used the Serenity Prayer in the past and found it helpful. But Jack was a child, one that could not speak for himself. Letting go felt more complicated. I had become buried and weighted down by all the recent fear and drama, which fed into my coping mechanism, control. You remember what we had discussed? You may not have control over Jack and his programming or the people, places, and things, but you do have control over how you deal with it. Acceptance is a superpower, she said. Yes, I've had moments, even periods of time, when I would feel peaceful and free. When I have been able to step back and to trust, I said. Well, when the fear comes back, as fear does, I want you to disrupt its flow. You can recite the Serenity Prayer or simply say, I'm choosing to trust myself and the process. And by interrupting the thoughts coming into your mind, it will break the dysfunctional cycle. I feel like I've gone through stages of trusting the people he's working with and trusting ourselves as his parents. It's been a bit of a tug of war, but it always is before we fully surrender, she smiled. Where do I begin? I asked. You need to get back to who you are. You said that you're a writer. Yes, I've always journaled, I said, feeling perplexed as her question by her question, as it never had been a paid vocation. It is at the core of who you are. Write about good things. Go back in time and find the spiritual breadcrumbs, the synchronicities that brought you here. Fill your pages focused on gratitude, and it will transform you. You will let go. I allowed her words to breathe into me, filling me with hope. The gift of uncertainty has allowed me to deepen into faith. And as I practiced letting go, faith took hold. But the faith I found wasn't rooted in others. It was rooted in me, in Jack, and in something bigger than ourselves. Chapter 28, Sailing Lessons. Another week had passed. Jack had been at sailing lessons for 2 weeks and had been equally excited and exasperated learning how to sail and navigate around the lake. To my surprise, He enjoyed capsize day, but later in the week I heard him shouting orders at his sailing partner as they drifted away from the group. The instructors had seen Jack's boat and circled back in their little powered dinghy to assist them. In the end, he took instruction and the boat was righted, but there was no aid or place to take a yellow break on a tiny sailboat. It was a real life situation, and I was pleased that he came back to his center. Regardless, I was definitely out of my comfort zone. I planted myself in a seat in the beach area next to the boathouse. I journaled and continued my push-pull relationship with fear and trust while I waited during the 2-hour class. To mark the end of the season, the instructors put on Pirate Day. It was a treasure-seeking competition using boats to sail to the small islands within the lake to gather clues to where the pirate's booty was buried. Teams of 2 worked together on this epic journey using skills and knowledge they had accumulated over the past few weeks. Raising the bar even higher, Jack's eldest brothers had talked about Pirate Day for years. Kieran's pirating stories were legendary, and Jack had even heard the instructors talk about Kieran's feat to get the gold, probably as a cautionary tale, but I got the feeling that there was a thread of, can you believe that kid, mixed in with equal admiration of the stories they told. Competition ran deep as both Patrick and Kieran were in the same class. Mayhem ensued. There was sabotage, boat tipping, and even mass scaling. Thankfully, nobody got hurt. And although it was never directly said, new rules were put into place the year after the Donovan boys. The majority of the competition took place on the water and on the sister islands in the center of the lake. I watched as they sailed offshore. The sailing instructors traveled behind in their motorboat. Jack's boat had a rainbow sail with a fish on it. He was at the stern and his partner was in the middle of the boat as they gently moved to the first island. I felt relieved as I could see which boat he was on, but as they glided away, I began to feel uncomfortable. Fear was bubbling up. As the boats diminished in size, I started to laugh. By myself in my beach chair at the edge of the pond, I burst out into uncontrollable belly laughter. It struck me hard. I had absolutely no control over Jack, his behaviors, or his emotions. He was on a boat in the middle of a lake. If something was going to go down, I had no way of intervening or protecting him. And at the heart of it all, control had been riding shotgun in my life. I had been determined to keep things afloat and flowing smoothly. No bumps, no detours allowed. As I sat feeling uncomfortable, it was so clear to me. It wasn't about Jack on a lake. It was about everything. And control was an illusion. Even with the matrix of support, it was up to him. In addition, he was a human child. He would have missteps. Why were my expectations greater for him than any of his brothers? Was it because the stakes were high? That our options were limited? We were pioneering a trail, cobbling together a program in a public school system with hopes that it would work. I couldn't control it all. I planted the seeds, fertilized, watered, and nurtured the garden. But in the end, other influences would play a part. Factors like the sun, the environment, and Jack. Time crawled as I watched the boats crisscross from island to island. I could barely make out the differences in sails, but I did see a couple of bodies jumping ship before making land. The sound of laughter and yelling echoed across the calm water. I took a breath and I closed my eyes and listened to the sounds of competition, discovery, and excitement. These were the sounds of childhood. And no matter what happened on the water, it was another opportunity for Jack to grow. Hell, it was an opportunity for me to grow too. Why did I let my fear override my excitement for his independence? I took another breath and slowly released the air from my lungs. A moment later, I felt something tickle my foot. I glanced down to see that a dragonfly had landed on the top of my toe. Its wings shimmered in sunlight, and the deep blue of its body had an iridescent glow. Earlier in the week, a friend had shared with me her encounter with a bunch of dragonflies while visiting her sister's grave. It was as if they were performing a dance of celebration for her. She looked up the spiritual meaning for the dragonfly when she got home, and when she told me what she found, I got goosebumps. The symbolism of the dragonfly is one of transformation and adaptability, to see beyond the illusion of what is on the surface and to find joy in the moment. For my dear friend, the spirit of the dragonfly invited her to feel happiness for her sister's transformation. It was a powerful message, one that my friend needed to hear. As I watched the dragonfly dart off and skim along the top of the water, I heard my inner voice say, "Thank you." I acknowledged nature's nod to me and the synchronicities of hearing about my friend's experience just days prior to being touched by the dragonfly at that exact moment. I felt a wave of peace wash over me. Fear is the illusion. I can't control Jack or anyone else for that matter. Transformation was happening right before my very eyes, in Jack and in me. We were loved and supported. No matter how things would play out, we would be okay. Sounds of victory bellowed out from the path that led to the boathouse. The pirates had landed back on shore. I began to pack up, tucked my folded chair underneath my arm, and headed to the boathouse. I arrived in the clearing and saw a group of outlaws eating their bounty of snacks. Jack was talking to another child who was holding a golden trophy. Jack saw me and broke his conversation midstream to announce that his buddy Sam was victorious. "Sam won. Sam is just like Captain Kidd, Mom," he said loudly. Sam's smile widened, and so did Jack. "My boat came third, but not last," he said in a quieter tone as he pointed over to the two boys sitting and chewing Twizzlers together under the tree. "But it doesn't matter because we all share in the captain's treasure," he said as he shoved a white small cupcake into his mouth. Victory is best when shared, I thought as I watched Jack celebrate with his peers. Transformation and adaptability were ever present. My heart softened as the day's awarenesses took hold. Letting go of fear, of the illusion of control, was freeing. To witness Jack and his success of navigating new situations was icing on the cupcake. As our lives have played on beyond the boundaries of these pages, I have seen these gifts take hold. The ongoing challenges in the early years of Jack's diagnosis had to be addressed daily. The commitment we had to showing up over and over again gave us the gift of resilience. In living a resilient life, I no longer strive for perfection. I understand that practice doesn't make perfect. It makes a life. Today, I find laughter in the folds of chaos as I understand that fear doesn't have to override joy. I find pockets of peace, even if the world feels like it's falling apart. In the seemingly ordinary details of the past, I have found them steeped deep in faith. As I rise each day, I open my heart and mind to the uncertainty of it. In the uncertainty, there is limitless possibility. How do I know this, you might ask? Well, just ask my son, Jack. Thank you for listening to 3 Gifts and the selected passages I've just read from my book, A Life Suspended. We will open up this for questions and conversation at the end. But now it's time for my beautiful friend and colleague, Joanne Crawford, to share her book, Choices.
Thank you, Nicole. That was great. Let me open this up here. Okay. So I'd like to begin with giving you a little background. My son was born in 1993, and at age 2.5, Ian still wasn't speaking, but the doctor assured me boys are slow. So I didn't pay much mind to it. By age 3, he was diagnosed with severe autism. Ian is nonverbal. He doesn't speak or understand normal conversation. And I've spent the last 24 years searching for doctors and therapies, fighting for services, and advocating for his rights. In 2015, he turned 22. Overnight, he was forced out of his residential school and into the world of adult services. This proved to be my greatest challenge of all. I'd like to read an excerpt from my book Choices about that time. It's titled, The Letter. Daryl's reply admitted something should have been done last year and assured me Ian would be placed by his 22nd birthday. His office would provide updates and devise a plan B. At this point, the words and actions of DDS caused me to take great pause. I had lost faith in its integrity and the role it was supposed to play in the process. My son's future was in the hands of a local agency that had no real interest in his well-being. He was one of the many getting lost in the shuffle of the system. Someone in authority needs to know what was happening down here in the trenches, but who? I sat at my kitchen table and wrote a letter to President Barack Obama. Dear Mr. President, I need your help. I am a single mother of 2 young adult children. My son has severe autism. Over the years, I have struggled to keep a balanced home environment and am blessed to be a proud owner of a Habitat for Humanity home. In 2008, I had to make the heart-wrenching decision to place my 15-year-old son in a special needs residential school. However, for the first time since his diagnosis, I was able to seek full-time employment. For the past 7 years, I have been working as a special needs education assistant in the public school system. Inspired by my experience with my own severely autistic son, I felt compelled to give back to the community by helping other children. The accumulated knowledge and skills, both personal and professional, have enabled me to be effective in all classroom settings, severe, moderate, and learning disabled. My son turns 22 in March 2015. He will be forced out of the public school system and into the world of adult services. I have experienced little to no support from the Department of Developmental Services during this past year, an important transitional year. The task of searching for an appropriate placement in an adult day habilitation has been placed on me. Although it is the job of DDS to provide guidance through this transition, I found myself scrambling to locate and network day habs in the area where he will live in a group home. Now, in the 11th hour, I am running into the challenge of no openings. Day hab programs are at full capacity. My son requires an intensive program. And when I asked DDS what could be done for my son while we continue to search for an appropriate placement, I was told he would have to come home. I cannot believe this would even be allowed. The reason he was approved for an outplacement in a special needs residential school at age 15 speaks volumes. I am a single parent. I will be 60 years old in June 2015. My son is literally head and shoulders above me. Requiring him to move back home would be disastrous, jeopardize his safety, my safety, and displace me from the workplace. I would have no means of support and would lose everything I worked for, including my home. My son should not have to suffer as a result of DDS's lack of planning. I am asking for your help in changing the way that DDS handles these transitions. People like my son are not just a number. They have lives and families too. We need more rehabilitation programs and housing to accommodate these young adults. 1 in 68 are diagnosed with autism. An estimated 500,000 will turn 22 and transition out of the public and residential schools nationwide over the next 15 years. We are not prepared to receive this deluge of young adults with autism. Where will they go? This could surely overwhelm the healthcare system. Being more than aware of the need, I'm trying to be part of the solution on a small scale. For the last 4 years, I have held the position of secretary on the board of directors for a nonprofit building housing for adults with autism. I was one of the original handful of parents who launched this grassroots movement in 2011 to create meaningful and dignified lives for adults with autism. This year, we closed on a parcel of land. We are actively fundraising and raising awareness of the increasing need for community like this. This model would not only provide housing, but also structure, support, and integration into the wider community. Autism is beyond epidemic proportions. Although diagnosis and early intervention has improved, there is still no cure. Yet no one is planning for this imminent tsunami of aging young adults with autism. I ask that you make this a priority of national conversation in healthcare. Education and awareness are key to the solution. Thank you for listening. Respectfully. I stamped and sealed the envelope with a wish and a prayer. Someone would read it. I mailed it on March 1st, 2015. A letter, part 2. It was a late June afternoon in 2015, and I had just picked up my 24-year-old daughter from work and was heading home. I reached the top of my driveway, put the car in park, and hopped out to check my mailbox. I grabbed a handful of envelopes and slid back into the car. Glancing at this pile of mail, I noticed the return address on one white business envelope. It read, "The White House." Why would the White House send me junk mail? In the few seconds it took to reach the bottom of my driveway, I realized this might be a reply to the letter I sent back in March. Stunned by this possibility, I turned to my daughter. This might be a reply to my letter to President Obama. Open it, she demanded. I carefully unfolded the letter. It was on White House stationery with a raised seal and what appeared to be the president's personal signature, written with a felt-tip pen. As I read the words aloud, tears rolled down my cheeks. My brain was trying to process what I was hearing myself say. We both sat in the car stunned by what we were experiencing. My letter had been selected out of the tens of thousands received by the White House every day. My letter was chosen to be read and answered personally by the President of the United States. President Obama had validated me. My voice had been heard. 2 months later, the phone rang. I looked at the incoming call, no name, just an unfamiliar number. I usually don't answer those calls because it's most likely a telemarketer on the other end. But this time, something told me to pick up. A man gave me his name the way telemarketers do, and I confirmed he was in fact speaking to me. He identified himself as a member of the President's Committee for People with Intellectual Disabilities. President Obama had asked him to follow up on a letter sent him regarding my son. I felt a body rush of elation and nervousness simultaneously. We chatted for the next 30 minutes about the need for a national conversation about autism, its aging population, and the need to plan to care for them. I expressed my gratitude for President Obama's letter and also for his phone call. I told him how much it meant to be validated and heard, that parents like me are not often heard. Our cries to meet the needs of our children are often dismissed or become an uphill battle of negotiation with agencies and schools. He praised me for my advocacy for my son and my volunteer work. He promised to send a follow-up email with his contact information should I have any additional questions. Days later, I received that email as promised. Unbeknownst to me, this would initiate an 8-month online email conversation that would spotlight a much bigger issue. So the details of my story may be different, but the common threads of autism are the same. 1 in 54 are now diagnosed with autism, and 1 in 54 has a story like mine. Autism takes you on a roller coaster ride into an unknown, confusing world of uncertainty that tries the depths of your strength and wears you down emotionally, physically, and financially. Families like mine are running a desperate race against time. Autism changes everything. My memoir, Choices, was released in 2019. It's not a resource book. It doesn't have answers to the latest breakthrough treatments or therapies. It's a book about a parent up against autism and all that comes with it. It's a story about challenges, courage, and resilience. A story that I hope will educate, empower, and inspire others to know that they are not alone. And my wish is that Choices sparks new insight on these 3 things. 1, that you always have a choice. Even if you choose to do nothing, that is still a choice. 2, your voice matters. Do not be afraid to speak your truth. As special needs parents, and specifically as women in general, our voices are often dismissed. Keep speaking anyway. Someone will hear you. Be heard. And last, just begin. Sometimes this can be one of the hardest steps, but once you are in motion, more opportunities will present themselves. Stay the course, don't give up, and trust your instincts. Thank you.
Wow. I'm like speechless. This was extremely emotional and very raw and very personal. And I'm just so appreciative of you of sharing this. It's just incredible what you're both going through. Did anybody from the audience have any questions? If you raise your hands. Or... I'm curious too, how are your children doing now? I mean, your son, how is your son doing, Joanne?
He's doing well, actually. Yeah, he just turned 28, and he is doing really well. I have to say he's at an excellent group home off Cape, and the people are wonderful. And I always say that, you know, as parents, you know, we are handed this, and we have to figure out, you know, how to navigate all of the therapies and the behaviors. And but those who work with our children, the educators, the caregivers, they choose to do this. From my point of view, these are earth angels. They do magnificent work. I can't praise them enough.
Nicole?
Yeah, my son is 16 and he is he's doing amazing. You know, it's funny, when we began the pandemic back in April, I was in the middle of trying to decide what to do with this book, whether to put it out or not to put it out, or it's just, you know, so much uncertainty. And as I was listening to Jack in the next room navigate his classroom Google Meet, learning and showing up and being engaging and doing all the things that were expected of him and more, like he's just an amazing student and takes pride in what he does. There's no behaviors, you know, I mean, other than typical, like clean your room, you know, let's get off the computer, you know what I mean? Like those typical things. You know, he's just amazing. And so he's in there navigating the Zoom, Google Meet, whatever. And I'm in the next room listening to him going, oh my gosh, this is so different than it was 8 years ago around the same time, when he was running from buildings, swearing at teachers, totally filled with anxiety, just filled with the fight or flight. What a momentous place that was for me to recognize and say, you know what, he's doing so great. And it took a lot of, you know, sweat and grit and dedication and belief and a lot of help from a lot of professionals to make this happen. So that's why the story needs to come out now, because there's hope and it gets, you know, it gets better.
So since you both had the experiences of raising a child with autism, what advice would you give to somebody who's just been given this diagnosis about their child? You said it's 1 in 54 now, so that's a
Right.
lot.
It is a lot. First, take a breath. You know, yeah, that's a tough question. I think that I would definitely be researching, you know, getting any information I could on organizations and support services and funding. I was amazed along the way, the information that I was able to gather, because back in the early 90s, I didn't have a cell phone. I didn't have easy access to the internet. I didn't have a computer. And so everything I did was word of mouth and on the phone. And I just kept asking questions. And I think, you know, even as they grow and mature, that's ongoing, because things change. You know, they require different supports the older they get. So I would say, you know, take a breath, you know, try to connect with as many people who are, you know, educators, therapists, organizations. They will help lead you to the next step. They're really good at that.
Thank you. Nicole?
Yeah, I mean, I would also say breathe. because it is a lot to digest, especially, for us, my situation, it was, I felt relieved because I felt like I was always trying to find the answer, that they were giving me these diagnoses that, they seemed reasonable and they seemed valid, but I always felt like there was something more. So for me, when I got the diagnosis, I was like, thank God, now we can start putting things in place for this young man. And for me, like Joanne, I mean, this was 9 years ago when Jack got his diagnosis, and there was no podcast that I was aware of that had information. The internet had some, certainly some information on there, but like trying to get rooted with people that were going through it was really challenging for me, because the support groups were during the day and things like that. So, but now it's a whole new world. It is a beautiful, amazing world out there where we have these technologies in place, and there's groups online like Finding Cooper's Voice is a wonderful place to land and find community in there. And there's all these women that come together and talk about real things. So groups like that you can align yourself with during these times where it's very challenging to meet in person, I would highly, highly recommend that. And also, ask questions, and don't be afraid to ask for help from these professionals, and don't be afraid to keep calling them and tracking them down, because they're busy. We're all busy. But I think that, in this process, I was able to find my own voice and to really stretch my viewed or whatever limitations that I had about myself and be that advocate. And it really gave me an opportunity to become a very more grounded and more vocal person, which has helped me in every area of my life. So it's definitely an opportunity for change.
So how does somebody go about getting your books?
Joanne, you want to go first?
There we go. I had to unmute myself.
Oh.
Yes, so my book is on Amazon, and certainly you can get it from my website or through my website, jmcrawfordwrites.com, and Titcom's bookstore on Cape, the Booster Bookstore, and Barnes & Noble, and just...
And might there be a book signing at the Osterville Library?
Sure.
May 5th?
When?
Yeah, we have one already planned, Cindy, right? Where it's on May 1st on Saturday, and rain date, I guess. Or I guess we could do it in the rain. I don't know.
Yeah, we're in the gazebo.
So we're super excited about that, because I know for me, I had a very small book signing, but this will be so much nicer being out, in the fresh air and with Joanne, my partner in crime. So I really look forward to that. And if you're looking for a Life Suspended, I'm also available. And I always say where all good books are sold. You can find me on Barnes & Noble, Amazon, local bookstores. If they don't have it on their shelf, they certainly can order it. And right now, Titcom's, we've aligned ourselves with them in a collaboration where the first 2 people that buy one of our books, whether it's Choices or Life Suspended, will get the other book for free. So the first 2 people. So they're running that promo to help, engage in this conversation about autism and to educate others. So we're so proud and happy about that.
Well, I appreciate so much you taking the time today. I'm going to wrap up this part of the program. The emotion and is just incredible in what you are doing, and also having the time to do the books and do these talks, and what you're contributing to helping people is just amazing. And I thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah.